Oh, looks like we're being live streamed.
There we go.
Awesome. All right, I'll call the city council work session on February 7th, 2023 at 6 p.m. Change into session here, and we have 4 items on the agenda tonight. So we'll make sure we're watching our times. But first up is David with ARPA funds discussion.
Yeah, so you may have heard us throw that terminology around. ARPA stands for American Rescue Plan Act. It was signed into law by President Biden in March of 2021, and basically it was just relief and economic recovery for, due to the COVID pandemic. The cities in Oregon directly received more than $680 million, and the city of Sherwood's portion was a little over $4.4 million. It's going to be more than that dollar figure listed there because we are earning interest on that. So, just some important dates that went along with this act. You must obligate the money by December 31st, 2024. And cities have until 2026 to complete projects or spend all the funding, or you go back to the federal government. And the next reporting deadline I have to the federal government is April 30th, 2023. So that's coming up. Now, the recommendation I have for the city is currently this money is sitting in the grant fund. It's sitting in contingency, which means we can't spend out of that. It was through the budget process. Is transfer the money from the grant fund into the general fund. And by doing this, we would report it into the police budget because police payroll is eligible use of these funds. And it just provides ease of reporting and federal compliance requirements. And I ran this by our external city auditors. They're okay with this. Other cities in the state of Oregon are doing this. The one biggest benefit is, the police are 100% general funded. So by using this restricted money to fund the police, or at least $4.4 billion of the police budget, that unrestricted money that we're used to allocating to the police department now, it basically just frees up that unrestricted dollars. It satisfies federal reporting requirements. It reduces the risk because if the city did decide to allocate this to certain projects, there's a lot of compliance requirements that department heads will have to follow. And the risk is if you have any kind of questionable cost, if the auditor would find that, you do owe the money back, and the federal government likes interest on that money back. It eliminates any spending deadlines that figure I talked about 2024 and 2026, and then it offers quite a bit of flexibility now what we could do with that $4.4 million in unrestricted dollars. And what I'm proposing, if council agrees to this, is I prepare a supplemental budget before that April 30th deadline, so maybe the first meeting in April, bring a supplemental budget in front of city council, and at the same time bring a resolution, maybe committing these funds, council putting a commitment on these funds. And the reason why I want to do that, or I'm suggesting that, is it wouldn't get mixed in, let's say, with the 5-year forecast. These are committed dollars. It gets removed from the 5-year forecast. And then also if the city were to ever go into future negotiations, someone's going to say, well, the general fund has $10 million in the fund balance. No, let's remove the ARPA dollars that are sitting there. This is the money we're talking about.
Except at that point, we would not want to be calling them ARPA dollars.
No, we wouldn't be calling them ARPA dollars, but there's a committed balance in the general fund that city council is committed to.
And will that be, that was my question, where will we see that money parked? Will it be clear in the budget that those are committed funds?
Yeah, it would be it'd be sitting in a reserve for future years unless we decide that, okay, there's $1 million we want to spend of this money, and then we budget to wherever.
Some that's already been used, right? Or we will be using for one time.
At some point, we have obligations to organized groups to pay a one-time payment of some amount. Do we know what that total is?
I don't have that off the top of my head, but I will.
Do you know approximately what that number is?
Yes, it's about a little shy of 250,000.
Of that concept, you have more to say on that?
It really, it's just committing dollars. It's through council authority. You can put specific restraints, and you can, city council can modify or rescind any of these commitments at any time. And with that, if you agree to this, I would need some kind of direction in terms of how to write up this resolution to commit the dollars, if you decide to go that route.
I'm
Oh, go ahead.
I'm supportive of it. Personally, I'm supportive of that concept. I think we should label a fund for that after the $250,000 to one time to staffers. One idea is like a city investment fund. So we say, yeah, this is for future investment that we'll make on, and we say that it's for real property acquisitions or capital improvements. So we'll have future conversations about how to invest that money. That we literally in the books on reports, we have a city investment fund that says $4 million accruing interest. And the only way we can spend it is by an active council. So it's really clear where it is, and it's not against reserves.
That was where my concern was, so I want, to be clear that it's parked somewhere separate from.
So what you'd say is maybe set up, I don't want to say reserve fund, I can look at different fund structures outside the general fund and some kind of, and budget law will allow me to set up I have to bring a resolution authorizing a new fund, if city council authorizing a new fund, but since it wasn't planned during the budget season, this could be done through the budgeting process, so the supplemental budget could always be done in June.
Yeah, transfer
The money.
transfer it, and then not and at some point, if we need a meeting after that, with Ryan's help, pass an ordinance or resolution creating the fund. And that action is transfer from the general fund to that specific fund, the 4.2 million. Then we, through meetings that anyone calls to say, hey, let's talk about projects, investments that we want to consider making. Then you can do that.
Yeah, because we're gonna have, well, before I chime in, I'll say any thoughts.
Well, not really, other than, we know that we've got some land we need to purchase in Sherwood for parks or civic buildings or anything like that, and we've always said, well, and so.
There's lots of ways of.
There's lots of ways to spend it. And the only kind of thing I'm trying to think of is there any reason not to do this, right? If you had to switch your other hat on and say, well, what is the downside? Like, I literally can't think of a downside to making the money more fungible, and so.
And I don't know what other communities are doing for sure, but certainly folks are saying this is how, like they might ideas, they want to do this, or this.
Yeah.
And
Well, actually, that would be the negative, right? Is that people, again, I don't know how many people know that we have this money, but they may be saying, well, you're not spending it for, recovery for us right now. And so is there a negative marketing or anything like that? And frankly, my answer to it would be, well, right, but we're helping, with the 250,000, we're doing a one-time payment for people who are affected mostly from the city, and then we're going to use this to benefit the city as a whole for capital. You know what I mean? Like I think I could spin that, but
And I would hope collectively we would have at the federal level that they're saying to make the decisions on how to commit these dollars in the next 2 years. If we are meeting the federal reporting obligations to make staffing efficient,
yeah,
which, if we're going to spend a whole lot of money on reporting efforts, then that makes it, trying to say we're wasting money if we're going to just have a half-time FTE just to do the reporting on 10 projects. Or if we do this, minimizes staff overhead expense, better utilizes the resources that are left. And hopefully, from my perspective, we have conversations to say how we can commit those dollars, invest those dollars in the community the next 2 years.
And it significantly reduces the risk to the city.
yeah, I like it. Yeah, I see it on the upside.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is, this becomes one tool in our toolbox. We'll have URA funds, we'll have lease funds, we'll have, other buckets of money so that, you can throw like water fund and all that. So as we evaluate projects, if we can make what's the best decision for that project in terms of which fund we did spend. It's kind of how I look at it. So,
Excellent.
yeah, it's very good for us. So I'm in favor of this as well.
What was the original intent for this money from the government side?
It was just to provide relief, subsidies. Originally, it was you could use it to replace lost revenue. And then they came out with all these requirements for how to calculate the lost revenue, but then they had a $10 million standard deduction where anything below that, you didn't have to itemize all your lost revenue. It was really to assist cities that lost a lot of revenue, help them through the economic recovery. Some cities fared worse than the city of Sherwood.
Like the coastal cities, that are heavily dependent on transient lodging tax, they got hit hard, so they shoot up these funds immediately. And I think in the federal government's rush to get this out, they just kind of standardized the formula. And so Sherwood made out really well in the city.
Yeah. If you go talk to leaders in Hillsborough or Beaverton City, our adjoining neighbors that were getting normally, $100,000, $200,000 in revenue per hotel, then they went to nothing. So that created enormous budget holes. We never had the luxury of that kind of revenue, so we didn't miss it.
This is sort of a plus for us.
And I look at something in the states outside, other than Oregon, and the sales tax, similarly, there was, at least for a while, there was a bidding, as people stopped shopping for big purchases. So that created budget problems for a lot of communities. Communities that were dependent on sales tax, gas tax, other just general streams of revenue that shut down or greatly reduced, they still have to do the city services. So that was the crux of it. Help cities keep them going. Transit, people have transit organizations. Big problem.
Yeah, you look at like Metro, the zoo, convention center, they had to lay off a bunch of people.
So I'm in favor as well. I hope we have more conversations. It's not strictly limited to projects or infrastructure. If we have staffing issues or something, we might be able to hold them to.
It'd be rough for ongoing operations, one-time money.
I'm just suggesting that we have a good conversation.
I'm all in favor of further conversations. But I would also, one of the reasons I want to segregate it is this is one-time money. We gotta be very careful about spending it on ongoing. Not saying you would, be a good reason. So do you?
I have the direction, I know.
So you can work with Ryan on preparing a resolution, and is everyone okay with just doing this right after budget season? Or do we want to get it done soon?
Well, you can do the transfer before the fourth deadline.
Yeah.
The April deadline. And then after the transfer is done, then we can do the other part.
Yeah.
But after the April deadline, then you're done with your reporting, because you've spent it.
Yeah, and then just when the auditors come in the following year to conduct the audit on this fiscal year, they will be doing tests on that, spending the federal dollars, and they pretty much said it shows up in the police budget, police salaries, you can see that ratio, you can see the 1-to-1, and I'm sure there's more tests they have to do, but it's pretty clear and good, straightforward.
That meets the obligated requirement, and I'm sure we'll run it down before we get to that later date. No, that sounds great.
Okay.
And as you mentioned at the beginning, for budgeting, we'll keep that segregated out.
Yeah, during the budgeting process, we'll make sure and create that additional fund in the city. It'll be a new fund, and we'll get the money moved over there.
Awesome. Thank you very much, David. Appreciate it. So our next item on the agenda is transient lodging tax. And guess who's up again?
Also David.
So I'm going to recuse myself from this conversation. I have a conflict of interest.
All right. Transient lodging tax, also known as TLT. Just basically tonight, kind of discuss the restrictions that the ORS statute puts on these funds. Potential use of funding. One thing we need to be careful of, let's try to stay away from specifics. Just because this fund, we didn't allocate any spending on, so we'd be just discussing future year's budget, and I just don't want to keep you on potentially violating any budget law. But I want to kind of give the figures that we're kind of considering here and talking about. The estimated fund balance at the end of this fiscal year, June 30th, 2023, is roughly about $350,000. That's conservative. And anticipated collections moving forward with just with the one hotel we have here in town. This also includes dollars for the Airbnbs, folks renting out spaces, their homes. We anticipate about $150,000 yearly in additional revenue. And I wanted to kind of discuss some risks. Now, ORS statute, they put restrictions on use of these funds, and it really depends on when you pass this ordinance. I know the city was after 2001, so 70% of the total net revenue must be used to fund tourism promotion or tourism-related facilities, finance the debt of tourism-related facilities. And then 30% of the net revenue is unrestricted, can use however the city sees fit. Now, possible uses of this revenue, I just wanted to kind of show council during this work session. Currently, what does the city spend that could be considered, related to tourism? Well, we do support all those special events here in the city of Sherwood, Robin Hood Festival, Cruising, Music on the Greens. And I kind of put some dollar figures in there of, how much we spend a year on those. Also, the Art Center. You'll notice a lot of cities here in this, and kind of our nearby cities, they are actually using transit lodging tax revenue to build art centers, to fund the art center operations. And I just want to give you, that's how much prior fiscal year, almost $450,000 was spent on art operations. Also the public art. I know we've talked about the art, the beautiful artwork we want to put in the roundabouts. That's could be considered, could bring in tourists. Park maintenance, we have beautiful parks here, that brings in tourists. And then just some other things, park amenities, trail projects, and then there's that 30% of net revenue that it could fund general fund operations, it could fund whatever we want here in the city. The one risk I just wanted to point out, and there's actually in the League of Oregon Cities report, 2019, is if the city decides to pass on this revenue to, say, a third party to use, the city just has to ensure that party complies with state statute, and they spend the money according to what's outlined in that statute. So that's really the one risk I see. And really for that, I just want to open up, kind of start having some general discussions, because that fund is starting to build the balance.
So, question about tourism and what constitutes tourism. Is the purpose to bring tourism so they're spending additional money in our town, or just publicity like, hey, Sherwood's awesome?
Could be relevant.
Yeah.
Is it both?
It's right, it's literally your interpretation to an extent. And some communities that have lots of hotels, it's not and they have a lot of revenue. If they start getting in areas that might be gray, we're not really proven and supported in other communities, they'll actually, get the hoteliers around and say, this is our plan, these are our ideas. At this point, we don't have, it's not that much money to kind of get into some gray areas.
Yeah, no, I just, like for instance, even the, the arts operations, funding that with the idea that if we are able to draw more people in that are buying tickets or having dinner at, the restaurants here, well, that's theoretically helping to financially improve. Whereas you know, maybe an art in a roundabout, nobody's, you know, it's a quality of life thing, but they're not spending money because there's art in a roundabout necessarily.
But it isn't allowed use under the statute.
Oh, no, it's an allowed use. I'm just saying yeah. I mean, like I love, in fact, I'd love to add more festivals. Just don't have time to organize.
I would venture to maybe push back on that a little bit. I think people do go to cities to view their public art. I mean, I know I've gone out to, I think it's, what's that city out there? It's not Forest Grove, Terryland, what's the?
Up North Plains.
North Plains, to look at their murals, and I mean, I think public art does draw people here.
Yeah, so, yeah, actually, that's true. Some of it does. I 100%.
I think in a roundabout,
Yeah.
but we're not.
I'm not gonna try to get a picture next to art in the roundabout, but, you know, the other murals you might definitely have. Anyway, Instagrammable.
Dan, did you have thoughts on this?
No, there's so many different opportunities for this money. I think that even though it's a small amount, I think that we can still do a lot with what we have. And it's only gonna continue to grow, it sounds like.
Right, with his at 150, you know, the big pool annually, one hotel, with another hotel. Yeah, and one more grow. So in the statute, 30% is free and clear, go to the general fund. What do people think of that and supporting programs, you know, potentially, you know, it's help pay for what the general fund has been doing already with the community organizations, support collective city operations.
Yeah, so here's my gray area that I was wondering about, is can I use, if I'm saying Sherwood's awesome, and I'm using that to attract business, and to say, hey, you should locate your headquarters here because look how awesome Sherwood, right, is that an approved use of it? Because it feels like.
So the cities I know that how they use these dollars, big ways, coastal, that have a big, you know, tourism activity with their coastal, they will do advertising campaigns.
Yeah.
We will do city maps for tourists,
Yeah.
maybe for smartphones.
Yeah.
So instead, they're doing apps on smartphones for tourists to get around. So they're trying to lure people into their town. So hotels love it if you're doing advertising to draw people to the town that have the hotel, for instance.
Could we do an app for Sherwood?
If it's, in theory, yes.
Okay.
Pendleton, is one of the towns, they take their hotel motel tax and they do, a third of the fixed, and they do public art. If you go to Pendleton, there's public art everywhere, and so they don't have that is their annual stream of revenue that they use and often leverage to get other dollars, so they can do public art, because they have no other revenue, you know, to really support public art, murals and statues and all that.
Okay.
Great success. Other communities, yes, use money to advertise and support locally to help their community organizations succeed. Do things to brighten up, shiny up their merchant areas or their main streets. You know, helping art as a comparison, redoing downtown something.
Some communities might stream some of it into the chamber, their Main Street program. There's a ton of options. Can I throw out
Risks,
right,
potential risks.
potential risk, but I want to throw out an option that maybe help reduce those risks. I think you probably have the same idea if you don't mind, but I think one of some of these cities put a lot of money into their art center. Because what it does then is they're not funding the art center out of general fund dollars, and it frees up those dollars, right? So there is, you know, if we wanted to, we could put a lot of this toward the arts center. What we're not spending on the arts center, because we put it there, we put it into a fund, economic development / tourist fund that's now unrestricted. We have, you know, so if we did give money to a community organization or something like that, we untied ourselves from a lot of those
Not to be able to
reporting
report.
requirements and stuff like that. We have flexibility. Just throwing that out there as an idea.
That would, we said over time, you know, we give it to the Robin Festival cruise in kind, like that, what you're talking about is our in-kind donation stuff, like those staff time and all that. But then like some of the groups come to the CEP grant and ask for money, we get free of the CEP if we used the 30% goes to the general fund or all.
Yeah.
To become a sponsor or something of those events.
For me, I see, let's help the core meat and potatoes of the organization. And say, okay, 30% can go to the general fund to help with parks, help with police, help with library, help with, and do that. So, hey, that goes to the general fund. And helps booster the core operations of the city. I like the idea of starting, at least we have one hotel, about a third to support an art fund. And the art project has to go through city council, through the cultural arts board, to see if we like it. If we get another hotel, we can at any point we can revisit the revenue stream, but just to help get things going with community art, since we really haven't done anything other than one mural. Then that 2/3, as Tim suggested, 1% to the art center, then in the books, create community development, community tourism fund, and then we have conversations about how to spend it. And initially, out of the gate, I would say, let's have that fund be a sponsor of our chamber cruising and our Robin Hood Festival Association at some level. We can pick a number, $3,000, $5,000, $8,000 for the first year. Then have, I'd love to then fund Bruce to do a little bit of research, pay for his time, because we should, from the city to produce
That doesn't mean extra.
No.
So make sure you.
produce a report of some ideas, and hear from what other communities do with this fund to support tourism, economic development, other things in their communities, just so we have that information to help make smart choices with ideas.
Yeah, I support that, and I know, I was talking to the owner of the Hungry Hero bakery, he goes, I think it can be, said, maybe they give me a $10,000 grant to open a bakery in their downtown, but I grew up in Sherwood, and so I wanted to do it here, and it was like, wait, who's giving out, is that why, when I go to Canby's downtown, I'm like, this is really cool, there's literally a variety of shops and all this stuff, and so, like, those are the kinds of things I want to do, and I want to, and why I said an app is I want, in addition to being able to communicate out, here's city things and volunteer things and all this stuff, I want local businesses to be able to, they don't have, SEO, search engine optimization people on staff to be able to do ads and stuff like that, and I feel like this would be an opportunity to help the Mud Puddles and the Sultans and the, all these companies that have invested in Sherwood to say, hey, we want you here, we're going to provide this for you as a perk of being here in the city, or at a low cost to push out local deals. I think I went to McMinimans this week, and there's a thing on the counter that says, if you come here on this particular night, 50% of our proceeds go to some city thing or whatever. And I'm like, I never would have seen this had I not happened to have lunch here, right? And those are the kinds of things that I think could make a real difference in our community.
Yeah, and that's kind of the bucket of, but
Yeah.
Bruce has the capacity, and that'd be, up to obviously K2 to understand, but that's an idea of, hey,
Yeah.
and with the reserves or the amount of money collected, out of the chute, budget process, we create these funds, formally create the art fund and restrict it, create a economic tourism development fund and divvy up what we've collected so far and then going forward. And at any point, we want to change our mind. City council has the authority to change our mind. But I like the perspective of well, look, if people are looking at us and saying, we're doing those nice realize, hey, we're gonna create a fund where we can see where are the monies that we want to use for economic development, tourism development. And then have conversations on how to, with some help to understand ideas. To do that.
I like the idea of Bruce going out and doing some legwork on this, because we have some amazing organizations in our community right now. We have like the Main Street program that's going through a wonderful process of rebooting right now. There's a lot of potential down the road with that. You know, and really getting to understand where those needs are. And I was gonna, since we're just kind of spitballing ideas, one of the things I was thinking about too is, you know, when we're trying to attract certain kinds of businesses, like restaurants or whatever that is,
Or bakery.
or bakery, or
We got a bakery, what a bookstore now.
a nice, you know, small town meat market would be great.
Meat hall butcher,
Yeah.
can't you have one of those?
Yeah, exactly. But we really, as council, unless we own the property who we're selling it to, have zero control of that. But these kind of funds, we can set up like STC grant offsets, you know, stuff like that, that has some of those restrictions attached to it. To encourage types of business months. So the sky's the limit, what we can do. But
Other than
but getting it to an unrestricted state is part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and similarly, like you were talking before, you like creating a fund, says this is where you're doing, and it's not going against, it's not showing as part of our reserves, the general fund, so it doesn't break with that. We can be as, you can act when we're happy to act, and pause when we want to pause.
So if I'm understanding right, we'll say the 30% would go to the general fund. 70%
Of the seven,
of the 70, 50,000 or whatever, a third public art.
right, well, it'd be
Of
like,
some
it'd be like $30,000 annually.
And then the 2/3 to the art center. And then freeing up that money from the general fund to go into this new fund, economic development, tourism, to be determined.
And in the first year, earmark, budget year, whatever, earmark, sponsorship dollars for our two leading tourism events.
Sound good?
And are we actually making a decision on this now, or is it you just wanted a general?
Well, we don't make decisions, we just give direction.
Give direction.
Yeah.
Prepare all the stuff we
Yeah.
need.
So I know how to prepare some things.
Yes.
I just want to sit back on your comment, because initially I thought we were just gonna look at this and do a third for an art fund and 2/3 for the art center, the 2/3 would then be freed up, but you were saying 30% in general fund and 70%.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah,
yes, you have,
just make sure I have the math right.
yeah, so the big pot, you know, if there's 100 grand, 30% is general fund dollars, goes to the general fund. To help support what the general fund is already doing in our community, and then including the in-kind support, that like by.
And the 70%.
And the 70% is the third, 2/3.
We'll get put in the art center, and then those unrestricted dollars normally funds art center will move to those.
Yep.
Those additional funds.
Yeah,
In the budget.
yeah. And if we,
Yes,
the
sir.
winds change, we have different ideas, we can certainly pivot.
Brian, do you see any hurdles?
I don't have any legal objections right now. I'm glad I'm not making a decision, because I was about to speak about this.
I mean, it's exciting, you know. Yeah, I'm super excited about the potential of this, and then the opportunity that it represents for the community, for the city council, to now work, as Tim was alluding, we're expanding our revenue streams and opportunities, so we can we already made a little bit of a pivot with community enhancement grant structure. Have this one-time money through ARPA that we'll deal with and be able to have opportunities that are, and then ongoing, growing hotel tax revenue. It's exciting.
I think the
When
thing
broadband starts really spending out some money.
Yeah, the only thing and what I like about separating it out is I don't want this to be something that trickles away and disappears, right? You know, so I like that idea of saying, hey, we have to be intentional about spending this other 2/3, because otherwise we'll come to us and say, here's the Sossaman plan, and we'll say, all right,
We're gonna spin it.
it's all trickled out different places. So,
Great, well, so David, you have what you
Clear
need.
direction, yeah.
So, prepare a resolution, the options, et cetera, et cetera. And, I don't know, what is the game plan? Do we want to do this just as part of the budget or how?
Yeah, the game plan would be, we'd have to, the city council, I'd have to bring resolutions, authorizing us to add additional funds, and then during the budgeting process, we'd be budgeting these funds.
Okay.
You know, it would basically just be funding from the general fund to transfers out.
With similar restrictions that we have.
Yeah, and we would describe the makeup of the fund, what's the use of the, any kind of revenue is used for
Yeah, and
these things.
And just, as an FYI for everybody, there is, LOC is on behalf of a lot of coastal cities and cities that rely on TLT, especially in the coast, they're pushing some legislation that would expand what you can do with TLT dollars, like Cleveland City wants to use it for transportation projects, because that's the key part of making the city easy to use. I don't know how much legs that will get, we'll have to watch that though, because that could change.
And,
our,
and Mayor, like, you just tell me to shut up if need be, but you had to, tonight or at a future time, we would have the conversation. You said that some communities are using, TLT to finance capital, projects.
Yeah, it was really interesting on tourism-related capital projects, for example, like the Art Center.
Construction.
Construction where you can raise your local TLT tax. Help pay for that debt issuance. Once that's paid off, whether it's a 10-year, 15-year bond, then you have to lower it back down to the original level. Here it's 3%. So say we wanted to potentially build something, we could raise the local tax and then drop it back down once that debt's paid off. It was really interesting when I was reading on that.
and a bronze 8-foot memorial statue to our previous mayor.
Memorial.
no,
You get in the
I was thinking, can we put,
Plate, right?
what if we put murals on both sides of the underpass that goes under 99? We put murals on both
That's
sides. There's a
I
project.
just encouraged this, and I shut it down because we had stuff to do, but I apologize. So let's, so you got your direction, you're good on that, and obviously consult with our brand new attorney, is at his first meeting. Well, you're not a brand new attorney. So we got two more subjects, so the next one is Eric, right? Which is outdoor seating permits. And Renee, you're back with us.
I'm back.
Ready to sit on?
Yeah, thank you. So tonight's discussion on the items for the outdoor seating program. The question in front of you this evening, should the outdoor seating permit program be continued on a permanent basis? If the answer to that question is yes, have some further discussion questions for you. Staff can provide guidance on this if it's needed. But should the program be seasonal or year-round? Should the geography of the permitted area be expanded or reduced? Right now, the pilot program applies to Old Town. And then changes to the actual area that can be used for seating. Mainly, should the on-street seating option be removed? The reason for that is we didn't receive any permits during this pilot program for use of on-street parking as opposed to the sidewalk use. And then any other changes that you guys might recommend or want to talk about.
Didn't 503 in Court have a whole tent down the middle of the street?
Well, that was during COVID,
That
that
was
was
a-
different.
that was
That wasn't
COVID.
That wasn't
This was post-COVID.
Okay, right.
Yeah, so we're just talking about use of sidewalk and parking stalls, not the actual road. Yep. Brief summaries, it was a pilot program between spring and fall of 2022, so it's now expired. We did have strict requirements for location and design of the seating, just as an example, a 5-foot wide pedestrian clear zone for the sidewalk. If we did get any for the street, making sure the clear vision areas at the intersections are clear, minimum height requirements for tents, et cetera. Strict requirements for insurance, general liability, personal injury, fire, and then if other permits were required, mainly fire for canopies and, electrical, OLCC for serving alcohol or any other, make sure all those permits were in hand prior to allowing them to occupy the right of way. Just a really brief summary, we issued 4 permits in total. Those would be the 4 that you're seeing there in blue. Again, the pilot program was contained to Old Town, but within Old Town, these were the 4 that we issued. All of them were for Railroad Street. The one that you see in yellow there, we received a permit, requested more information, but that application just never made it through to completion. Again, all of them were for use of the sidewalk, not use of any parking stalls. We didn't receive any complaints from the public. We did receive some comments from businesses that the insurance limits were high. We can provide some feedback on that to you as well. In short, our feedback is keep it the same. We did need to do some enforcement to actually get the businesses to obtain the permits. They were putting the seating out there without the pilot program permit. And so we call it enforcement, but just discussions with them. And they were happy to come in and get those permits.
What should we charge for?
150, 150. And that's my very brief presentation. Happy to answer any questions, but again, these are the main questions that we have for you.
Is anyone outside of the Old Town area asked for a permit?
Not that I know of through this pilot program. We do have permits for, I guess, a similar setup, mainly in our commercial shopping centers where we would have businesses occupying either the sidewalk in front of the private side, in front of the private sidewalk in front of the business, or parking stalls within the shopping center. But we didn't get any requests under this program specifically.
Trying to think outside Old Town where you would get a request,
Oh,
'cause everything else.
That's a private, but that's a
But
private.
that's private, I was gonna say,
lot,
outside
private
of
lot.
well, that's property.
It's,
Um,
this is where they're using public
Yeah,
space.
so my question is, even though they said the insurance was too high, did they think it was worth it? Have we asked them, did it pencil out for you guys? I know Pat Milo's had an extra 3 seats there. It seemed like some days they were all packed, and so the question is,
We only had one, and to be frank, I don't know exactly what the issue was with the one who applied and then didn't follow through. That could have been the issue, but the others, to me, if they actually applied and then demonstrated that they had the insurance, whether they had it up front or had to get, an amendment to their policy, that meant that they were willing to do it. I haven't really gotten feedback as to whether in the end it was worth it or not based on, their sales or anything like that. I'm not sure.
I thought that insurance requirements from my world, which is building, company I work for, building large retaining walls on $1 million projects, we don't even have to carry 2 million. Our IS is usually $1 million, but 2 million aggregate. And so I thought it was pretty high for seating on the sidewalk.
so the follow-up
But I would
question
leave
is,
that.
why
to
are
the
you
insurance
recommending,
folks, but
why are you recommending keeping it so high?
For basically city liability. So the city's is covered by that insurance, so it's just extra protection for the city. But of course, that's the
Yeah,
balance.
the balance is we're trying to do something that is a positive for the businesses. And if, let's just take it to the extreme, if it's $10,000 to get that extra insurance and the permits and the extra seating, do they make $10,000 extra in the summer to make it worth the hassle? Frankly, I would say they probably need to make 20 if that's the cost of it to be able to.
Well, I guess there's 2 sides to that coin. There's the coverage amount, right? So like if you're wanting 2 million coverage for the entire Robin Hood Festival, I would think an insurance company is going to charge you a lot more than just a couple tables. So I'm trying to understand what that looks like and what are they being charged for that additional coverage? It would be interesting to know what that looks like. I don't know what the cruising festival.
Sorry, real quick, the 2 million is consistent with what we our contractors, even for classes or the art center. So anyone who's needing us as additional insurance or any type of service or doing anything like that, that's what the amount was that we were given by our insurance.
It's a
Well, then I
consistent
think we would
practice.
need to keep that standard.
Okay, that's fine. Do we have, how much does that cost? Is it depend totally on the business
Well,
or?
It depends.
I mean, we get feedback from our instructors, because it's the same thing, it's not $10,000, I don't
Okay.
know for sure.
Okay.
For the festival, it's $3,500, essentially.
But that's for.
So,
That's
Yeah,
what
that's
the
what- yeah.
So it'd be less than that.
so for the Pirates of Congress, it was $300
Okay.
For 2 million.
for 2.
So, yeah, it's,
Right.
I mean, I guess, have we asked our businesses if they feel it's worthwhile to continue? That's, I would want to know what our businesses think.
Well, I think if we continue the program, it'll either be permanent or for another year. And the same way, we'll find out real quick if the same 4 or 5 or even more than that apply or not.
I mean, I definitely think it's worth keeping. Those tables are packed.
yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
I would just add that if, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it should be open citywide if there's a restaurant or something that is using the public right away, they should have that option.
Yeah, yeah, I think they're, but
I would agree with that.
If there's this, right, if there's space, I mean, the sidewalk, you know, not in Old Town, the sidewalks are very wide.
Right.
right, you gotta have that 5 foot.
Yeah, so there's the restriction on where you can go with sidewalks, but then some have parking in front of those sidewalks and some do not potentially.
I don't know, I can't think of a place just out of abundance. I mean, it's still gotta meet all the same requirements, but yeah.
I think we sort of jumped through hoops to get the parking spot allowance, you know, but nobody ended up using it, and so I would be okay with doing away with that.
Well, do we already have language for it though, right?
We do.
I'd roll forward, keep it seasonal. And see if, I'm not super excited about like some sort of parking structure or some sort of structure in the permanent structure. In the parking spaces along the road, like you'll see in other communities. But see if they want to do is try, I like the seasonal.
Is it seasonal right now? I can't remember.
We did a pilot for the season last year.
Oh, that's right, spring through fall.
Isn't there still tables up in front of Title III?
Seems like there is.
That's
Yeah,
like-
in fact, Milos, I think, has
I'm
them
trying to
too.
picture it.
So you're saying a year, roll it forward a year?
Or even make it permanent under the old rules, but then still have it be seasonal on that at the time. So in the event that somebody wants to, either do away with the parking lot takeover element, and then you then make it year round.
I like it year round, like you said, there are seats still out there in January, and
Yeah.
there's days that they can get used.
Frankly, I would say just do it year round, because where are they gonna put those 3 or 4 tables the rest of the, I mean, like, you're just causing a headache for them. In reality, we're trying to eliminate headaches for the businesses.
So
that are
maybe
down.
what becomes seasonal is the use of parking spaces. Maybe that's seasonal, everything else stays year round.
I like that.
That,
Yeah.
that lowers risk for structures.
Like, comment on that. I don't know for sure, but one of my thoughts on why we didn't get anything for the parking is because the requirements for the design are gonna be a lot higher and more expensive. So they gotta build a platform up to the curb level. If they're doing railings, they gotta show us engineering plans for that. And so part of the issue, perhaps, we didn't hear this, but my guess is that that could have been one of the reasons why we didn't get anything for on the streets. A lot more expensive for a pilot program.
However, if we were to leave it there, they would still have the option of doing it if they, during the season, if they found like,
Put it on wheels.
yeah, or something along those lines. I mean, it'd give them that option.
Yeah.
See if we take some.
Okay, so just to be clear, allow on street and then year round or seasonal for on street?
Seasonal.
Seasonal, okay.
Seasonal on the street.
And then sidewalk year round?
Yes.
Okay.
And from a process standpoint, my gut says they still need to reaffirm that they're wanting to do it. If they apply once, they only have to pay a fee once, they continue year after year. They have to keep applying, but they don't have to pay a fee. For year 2, year 3, year 4, they say, okay, everything's the same, here's my insurance, I'm valid, I'm legal.
Like a renewal.
Yeah. like renewal.
With no cost.
Yeah, no problem.
Yep,
Like that.
all right.
Just gotta prove you're insured.
Ryan has a question.
I just wanted to ask for some guidance and Eric and I had a conversation about whether looks like a resolution or an ordinance. And it seems to me if this is, I need to know, are we making this permanent? Or are we gonna do another continuance, trying it out again? If we're trying it for another year, I think resolution, if we're making it permanent, we probably need to make an adjustment for an ordinance. Thank you.
All right, so you guys got everything you need? So we are done with it, thank you.
We know that.
We're done with that.
There we go.
Yes, now on the judge topic, so, I think most of you saw, we just we'll process now. We had originally had this on the consent agenda, we pulled it so we can have a quick conversation about it. And I talked to Judge Jack, so he understands what we did, so it's not. But basically, just want to get information from all of you on how to proceed with this. And if you don't know the judge, who works in council, yeah, be a contract. And he has since 2011, he's not had any increases.
Fail on
Which-
council.
That's a fail on our side. So
I remember doing something in 15 or 16.
We did a mini review. I mean, we did a.
because we had a complaint, so we had a meeting.
No, I'm talking with the rain terror. We did review it.
Did that money go to her?
Well, he asked Keith about it, he didn't find anything, but I remember doing something.
But he did find the 2011, and that's still there. So.
Yeah.
And I even looked through our financial system, it was 2011.
That's ridiculous.
So, David, you did some research.
I did some research and then also, let's just say if, for the judge, if we were to add just COLAs to that $100 rate, it would have been this year roughly just about $130. When I prepared that resolution, and I apologize for putting that on and not go through the proper process, I just rounded up to 135 just because over the last 11, 12 years, you had to receive that minimal increase.
Even an increase, yeah.
Yeah, so, but when you look at other local jurisdictions, some are paying the $100, some are paying less, $88, but it just kind of depends on, I don't know how often those judges are in court. Here, the judge averages about, when I talk to our court supervisor, maybe 6 to 8 hours a week we're talking about. So at that $135, I looked at, okay, what would be the implications to the budget? You're talking about $7,500.
A year.
Yeah,
And he does a great job.
he
He
does.
does an outstanding job.
I have a good working relationship.
So if I could.
So we have our primary Judge Jack, and we've got alternates on the rare occasion that he can't make it, which is pretty darn rare.
Do we have a price that we pay our alternates, or is it the same as whatever we're getting?
So we need, I think we're paying everybody the same
Okay.
today. But I would like to task him, go, have a review the information, maybe check with our neighboring competitors, and task the mayor to give us a recommendation if we have some conversation with Jack.
Everybody okay with that? There's one other
Make
thing.
it retro.
Yeah, and I think we should make it retro just for Jack. I was going to suggest.
Retro to what,
Beginning of the year.
fiscal year or calendar year?
I'm kind of embarrassed at this.
Yeah, so, and then as a side note, when this contract was signed in 2011, it was signed by the city manager. It should be signed by the mayor for council. So we need to correct that too. So part of this will be working with Ryan to get that contract corrected. So it won't just be an amendment. It'll be a contract.
So really, you guys were following past.
I was going off of like.
Right?
Yeah.
So it just, yeah.
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
just, it happens.
It's-
not good.
But
But we're gonna correct it.
To that point, what are other jurisdictions doing in regards to the judge and who supervises?
So most jurisdictions in the city council that supervises, and I can tell you, Wilsonville's looking at doing a similar thing to what we're doing here right now. So our judge makes the exact same 100 an hour, and it's time for I say hour, Wilsonville's judge. It's $100 an hour. So I think there's probably some there, so I can pull his contract.
And then as your part of your review recommendation to council, if you could let us know if there's a rate, what's the rate for Judge Jack? Is it gonna be the same rate for his subs or not?
Sounds like illegal for us to ask what the going rate is for a judge.
So just to have some clarification, I think the charter does a good job of clarifying that in the contract. I mean, certainly performance reviews are appropriate. It would be inappropriate, to give a performance review based on how we stand cases. That's.
Wait a second. We hire a professional to interpret the law.
So do you think we could get this done prior to the next meeting and have it on the
I think
next
we could
meeting?
pretty quick.
The Consent agenda?
My goal would be have it in front of business.
You could get K2 the information and he could get it. Well, I mean, for our Friday, our weekly meetings that we all just sort of,
Yeah, and a lot of this information from other jurisdictions, that's not on their compensation schedules, the judges are listed in there. Newburgh was the only one I could find online. But like Beaverton, Tiger, they're all listed.
and how do we keep this on the council's tickler to be reviewing this, figure out?
Well, I know a part of the resolution I had put in there that the finance director during the regular budget season would
Bring it, any suggestions?
bring any
from the council?
suggestions or alert council of, hey, this is, just kind of put in particular
Can we just,
here.
can we just put it on the same schedule
That's what I was
as
gonna say.
attorney and manager?
Put it in the contract.
Just say,
Let's get line everything down.
yeah, and let's make it
It's
retroactive.
not just, oh, we should, we'd
Yeah.
like to, no. The contract.
Now, the one thing you mentioned is you made retro to calendar year. Are you thinking fiscal year, July 1st?
Calendar year.
January 1.
January 1? Okay.
I'd be okay with
I'd be
this.
okay with
I'd be
fiscal
okay
year.
with fiscal year as well.
All the way back to.
I feel
That's
that's
9 months.
Oh, yeah.
Not that
but
we're making any decisions
but we're-
here, but I'm okay with that.
We're 12 years past this.
Let's go back.
So we'll find out both numbers, what the budget impacts
Okay.
are. And K2 can circulate it in his weekly meetings and we'll have a resolution. Awesome.
Good.
Thank you, everyone. We have 2 minutes.
Wow.
So do you want me to just wait until I close and?
We're coming back in here right afterwards.
Yeah. You got
That's-
counsel,
Exec
we got
session,
somebody
correct?
here.
Well, I'm now.
It's not.